I know nothing.
You do. Hello, I have the lovely Neil Daws with me. Hi, Neil. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, I am Neil Daws, and I write as N.R. Daws. I write a series of historical crime novels set in the Second World War, although that's only a backdrop to the stories. It's not the main part of it. The crime is the main aspect of it. He's behind me here. I come from a background of being in the civil service, but 20 years of that was spent in security and counter-terrorism. Tried to write a spy novel, which didn't get very far for various reasons, including the fact that when I showed it to some of my colleagues, they said, you can't say that and you can't put that. So I decided to leave that one alone, turn to crime, as it were. And a long and winding road led me to a 3-book deal, which is great. That was a lifelong ambition. So here we are.
So you always knew that you wanted to write eventually?
Yes. I think it's my English teacher's fault. Mr. Sawyer at Lanfranc High School. He, as all English teachers do, every now and again they set you a task, an essay, or they give you a title or something, and then you have to come back with a story. And I was heavily into Agatha Christie stuff at the time. I'd found during the previous summer holidays, it was hammering down with rain. I'd done all the puzzles and everything, and there was a book. I think it was The Mystery of the Blue Train by Agatha Christie, and I read that. I thought, well, okay, interesting. Then there were a couple of other books around the house, which was Agatha Christie's as well, and some other crime novels. So when this particular essay came up, I thought, oh, I'll write a crime one. So it was basically, and then there were none. It was, I called it The Murders on the Island. I changed it quite a lot, but and I didn't get very far, obviously, because Agatha Christie book like that, essay, 1,500 words or something. But I went into great detail describing how the butler came in and what the lord of the mansion was doing. So I gave that in. I can hear some other sound in the background. Is that you or me?
It's probably a radio. I've turned it right down, but
oh, okay. Sorry. I thought, oh, I'm getting feedback here. No, so I put in this this essay, and I didn't think anything of it. Expecting a C- or something, and he actually read it out in class and said, "That's how you do description." I thought, oh, and I was massively embarrassed, and I was looking around thinking everyone's going to take the mickey, and they were all enthralled. I thought, I like this feeling. I don't get this with anything else. I'm not the most popular guy in the class. I'm not one of the elite clique, all that kind of thing. But I liked that. So I thought I'd keep on at it. And of course, it never works out like that. Life gets in the way, careers get in the way, need for job and money, then marriages and things. But I'd always written bits and pieces. And I read, my dad gave me some Alice MacLean books, which I've still got on my shelf. And they were kind of crime thrillers. I thought, yeah, I really like these. That's what I want to write. I tried to write a film script. I tried to write theatre play script. I wrote some things for BBC Radio. There used to be a little blue booklet, and you flick through it, and you go, oh, do this and do that, and you give them to there and send it off to here, and all had to go off in a little envelope, and then you waited about 6 months for it to come back and with a no, not for us kind of thing. But you're learning your craft while you're doing this, and I kept cracking on with that. And then obviously, well, not obviously, I started a pirate book, children's pirate book, set in a care home or an orphanage, basically. And the people I sent it back saying, "Oh no, pirates have been done." And then out came Pirates of the Caribbean, Vampirates. My granny is a pirate. Was it Scientist Adventures with Pirate? All these things, other king. I thought, well, there you go. You were wrong. I was right, but never mind. In the spy book, which has some of the elements in the spy book made its way into the Kember and Hayes novels, including Jonathan Kember, his name, and there was going to be a male sidekick. Then I decided it needed to be female. Then she wasn't a sidekick; she became more of an equal partner. So that kind of bled through into Kember and Hayes when I started to write those. Again, not getting very far with the early drafts. Sent it out to a few publishers and got some nice feedback. Yes, you can write, but this story's not right. Then went to Curtis Brown Creative. I thought, I really, really, really wanted to fly in a Spitfire. So I was saving hard for that. And I'd got about half the money. And I saw this Curtis Brown Creative 3-month course with Charlotte Mendelsohn. So I looked her up and thought, okay, well, her books do okay. She's a New York Times writer, contributor. So yeah, so I thought, damn it, if this goes well, I can buy my own flight later on in the Spitfire. So I went to that and found my writing group, which now has in it, well, not now, there's 15 of us, but we've got myself published, Lizzie Mary Cullen's doing various, she does kind of adult colouring books, but she's also doing some novels. The Last Beekeeper, which is by Saya Tarabi. One that you love, I know, is Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. One that's come out recently is hold on, I'll have to get the cover. No, it's not that one. It's next door. It's by Elliot Sweeney. I think it's The Next to Die by Elliot Sweeney. So there's a number of us in that group who have gone on to some success. But I mean, Bonnie's stratospheric. But at the end of that, you get a little gathering, you get a little kind of drinks party with the agents, and they all make encouraging noises, but then nothing comes of it. Or maybe the lucky one or two. But then the rest of us have to go out and fend for ourselves. But the writing group and the agent was saying, well, it's good, stick it in a competition, see how it goes. So I had a rummage around. I'd already entered things for the Bath competition and Yeovil and things like that. So I found this one, which was the Blue Pencil Agency First Novel Award. You put the first, I can't remember now how many words it was, 15,000, something like that. And then if you get through to the next stage, it's another 15,000. And then you kind of get through to the shortlist. And I was highly commended, basically third. And the agent, one of the judges was an agent, Nell Andrew of PFD, as she was then. She's now of Rachel Mills Literary at RML. And she invited me up to the offices to have a chat. And she was on my spreadsheet. Yes, I Mickey taken out of me at your last event having spreadsheets. Well, I am an ex-civil servant. What can I say? There's a spreadsheet of all these different agents and agencies and who to send out to and who and comments that came back and what have you. And Nell was on the list. She was in the next tranche that I was going to send the thing out to anyway. But she said, she invited me up to the offices, had a chat, and basically sold herself to me. And I thought, well, you don't need to sell yourself to me. Shouldn't I be doing that to you? But no, it's a partnership. They want you as much as you want them. So she made her pitch, and then I did my pitch, and then we agreed that actually it was going to be mutually beneficial if we joined forces, and ended up with these, which is brilliant. So basically, my writing group and Nell made my writing dream come true.
That's awesome. What an awesome story as well.
And if I ramble, you can stop me at any time. I do ramble. I've been told this many times by my wife.
Makes my life much easier if you just carry on. That's fine. That's no problem.
Okay.
So when you sat down to write those three books, or the first one, did you know that you were going to set it in the Second World War? Did you have your characters, or did it kind of develop as you started writing?
Well, that in itself is another long rambling story. While I was writing the spy book, as writers, we kind of look at stuff, and an article in the newspaper you'll cut out and put it in a scrapbook. I've got papers and books and in drawers and everything all over the place. I should have a filing system, really, being a civil servant. I've got spreadsheets, but I can't put paperwork in order. But yeah, so one of these things that I found was in the one of the newspapers, one of the tabloids. It was an article about female Top Gun women fighter pilots in Afghanistan flying fast jets. And I thought, oh, tear it out, stick it in a scrapbook. That'll be possibly a good thing to, even for a short story. Women flying fast jets. That's pretty awesome. So that got filed away. But I'd talk all the time to my family. Oh, I'm going to do this. Oh, this is my story. I got stuck on that, because talking it through, even if they don't respond, I suddenly go, okay, thank you for that. And then I go off because I've solved it. So my mother-in-law, who lives in the granny annex next door, she had seen this thing, and in her Woman's Weekly magazine was another female pilot called Joy Lofthouse, who is there. That painting there is a painting done from a photograph which appears on one of the books that I've got about the Air Transport Auxiliary. And this was all about her. I mean, she was a lot older then. She was about 92, I think she was, 92, 93 at the time. And it told the story of her as a young woman, as she went into the Air Transport Auxiliary kind of midway through the war because of her age. And then some stories about what she did and what they were about. I thought, I've never heard of the Air Transport Auxiliary. So I did a bit of research into that, went off to Maidenhead, which is where the ATA museum is, got some more information, and thought, yeah, okay. That's the story, not fighter jet female pilots, but pilots in the Second World War. Mix that in with a detective. I mean, my dad used to buy me books like Biggles, but W.E. Johns wrote a couple of others as well. One called Gimlet and another one called Worrell. And Worrell was an air transport auxiliary pilot. They must have been thrown out when my dad died and when we moved and everything, because I can't find them now. But I'm going to have to get hold of these online again, because I mean, probably now rereading them, they would be not as interesting as I found them at the time. But my memory of them were that they were really exciting stories. And this Worrell woman, she went all over the place, taking these planes all over the place. And I thought, oh yeah, well, I can set these in different areas, different airfields, and she can fly off and do stuff. But I still wanted a detective story, and she couldn't be a detective because if she was in the Air Transport Auxiliary, she was just a pilot. Women in the police force were few and far between, and they might be brought in to do filing or something like that. But most of the time, there were no female police officers, certainly not detectives. But then, rummaging around as I do in magazines and things, I came across this woman called Beatrice Edgell, who was I think she was the first female PhD for psychology, but she had to go abroad to do it. But then when she came back to Britain, she went to, I think it was Brentford College, which was part of University College London. And I thought, shall I use her? But no, she wasn't a pilot. But I thought, oh, okay, what I'll do is I'll make Lizzie Hayes this pilot, but her background will be that she was a PhD taught by Beatrice Edghill. She would have all this background of going to Oxford prison and doing research into criminology. So she would basically be a female profile at a time when not only were females not police officers, but profiling was not a thing. I know you got Sherlock Holmes and people like that who they say were the early profilers, but in reality, there weren't any. Okay, that's one character. Then I brought Jonathan Kember, the spy, forward, or took him back in time, really, and thought he's my detective. I'm going to give him a bit of a dodgy background. So he's been seconded away from the Met Police for some dodgy incident and back to his home force of Kent in Tunbridge. And I needed a pathologist. So I thought, okay, well, if I do that to the pathologist as well, there's something in their background that's not the match. So that'll give them kind of a mysterious kind of aura to them. And so he's sent to this little village, not really wanting to get involved in this kind of stuff, but there's nobody else. I found a lovely little snippet. Sir Bernard Spilsbury, who was the Home Office pathologist of the day, his word was law back then. If he said it was so, then it was so, and nobody would check the facts. I thought, oh, okay, well, he went to a place quite near to where my story's set, Brenchley. And there was a triple murder there. So he went there. The Tunbridge pathologist went there. So I thought, okay, well, if I set it right at that time, they'll all be over there with all the manpower, which will mean that's why my out of favour detective gets this case. And he gets to go there on his own. He meets the local Bobby. Lizzie Hayes comes roaring in on her motorbike and gets sent on her way. So he's got the ump with her for being a rubbernecker. And she's got the ump with him because he's another bloke who just said sod off. So they don't get off on the best foot. So it had to be historical because of the Air Transport Auxiliary. I wanted her to be his counterpoint and also foil, but also bring a different aspect. So he's got this kind of, oh, right, cop, law, legal, this is the way it's done brain. And she's got that kind of thing. So she'll go off and go, thinking, yes, but it must be, and therefore, aha. And he'll get to it by ABC. But they'll come together at the end and it all kind of goes, right, so it must be true then. So that's how it came about. All because I saw this article in the newspaper, and then my mother-in-law found the other article. And actually, I met Joy Lofthouse in Shoreham in Kent, not the one where there was an air crash. There's a Battle of Britain museum. You can walk along this little street. It's just like a little village lane, and you can miss it. But just up the steps and along a little path is this a couple of huts that are together, and inside they've got tons of Battle of Britain stuff that they've gathered from around the area that they've been donated. Some stuff that's not from the area, but it all pertains to the battle that took place over Kent. And they had, or they still have, I think, wartime personalities, I suppose you call them, pilots and engineers and photographic officers and all those kind of people. And she was doing a talk there shortly after my mother-in-law found that article. So I went along, and that's where I got the painting. And it's signed by her.
Oh. So
I went to see, and obviously there was a few people around, and they got the things signed, and they were all chatting. But I kind of circled around and went through the museum again. And when I came back, she was signing the last book, and she was still sat there. So I got another half an hour with her, which is brilliant.
Wow.
Because she was telling me stories like, I mean, the one that sticks in my mind, I've got them kind of jotted down in various places, but the one that sticks in my mind is that I said to you know, did you, because I was thinking, a female on an air base, not really wanted there. I'd read other stuff whereby they weren't treated that brilliantly all the time, and if they were, the men wanted something out of them, sex mainly. So she said, no, I didn't really get any misogyny or sexism, which was lovely. And she said, actually, when the Americans were brilliant and much more accommodating than the British airfields. And she said, if ever we were up and we had to get down for any reason, whether the weather closed in or there was a threat from other fighters or fuel or the engine, because they were flying good planes to the front to be used again, or beaten up planes back to the factories to be repaired. If anything went wrong and they had to land, she said she'd always look for an American airbase, because if you landed at a British one, you were given a cup of tea and a biscuit. If you landed at the American airbase, they'd all flock around you. They'd all be giving you compliments. They'd giving you nylons and chocolate and taking you away to have real coffee and all this kind of thing. So she always wanted to land at an American airbase.
Wow, how interesting. Awesome. If you were to have to make a cameo if your books were made into a film, which character would you play?
Oh my goodness. A cameo. That's really difficult. I don't know. I mean, I have got a hat like Kimber's, but I'm too old to play Kimber. I don't know. I'd probably play one of the guys in the pub who take the mickey out of the sergeant.
Yeah, it sounds fun.
I curmudgeonly old git in the corner with his pint of stout, playing dominoes, going, I remember you when you were a nipper.
Yeah, I can kind of see that actually. Do you hide any secret jokes, messages, or Easter eggs in your books?
Jokes, messages, and Easter eggs. No, I don't. But there's a couple of things. First of all, if the Kimber and Hayes series had become a longer series, there were bits that I'd seeded in the first three that I could have brought back later on to form another story, a different arc. But the deal was only for 3 books, but I thought I'll put them in there just in case. I mean, they fit anyway. Everything fits and is relevant to each story and the arc of the 3 stories. But if they'd gone on for longer, and if they do go on for longer, then there are bits and pieces in there that I can bring back, and everyone will go, I don't remember that, and then have to look back at the first thing. Oh yeah, there it is. So there's that. But there's something else which is kind of a little bit sad, in that the character of James Corcoran, Jimmy Corcoran, is a real name, a real person. It was my friends and I from school. We go out on hikes. We still see each other. We've been friends for 50 years. But unfortunately, he had some serious issues, and about 3 years ago, he took his own life. And I was trying to think of a way. I was writing, or I was quite a way into Quiet Place to Kill at the time, and we were all thinking, what kind of memorial, what kind of way can we remember him? I mean, we remember him in our hearts anyway, but I wanted to do something different, and we were thinking of, because we like hiking, we wanted to perhaps do or have a plaque on a stile or a kissing gate, out in the countryside that we can go and visit every now and again. Another idea was one of the pubs that we used to visit, that we started some walks on to see if they would accept a tree, an oak tree or a fruit tree. I mean, it's all quite expensive, and it involves getting permissions off of other people. And I mean, the kissing gate thing is about £2,500 to have that done, just to have a plaque on there,
Wow,
because
yeah.
basically they want to raise money to keep the countryside up. So, but I mean, I had these characters, and I wanted a village ensemble, if you like. So you've got Mrs. Garner, the kind of head of the gossip circle, and you've got the sergeant, and you've got the cafe owner that he's kind of attracted to as well. You've got the old World War One guy with the dog, who finds the first body. So I thought, obviously you're going to have a postman there. So James was a postman. So although the character in the book isn't James at all in terms of what he does and how he behaves and how in his appearance, I thought a nice way to memorialize him would be to just change that character's name to James Corcoran.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what name he was originally now, but I know that I think I used that character's name in book 2. So names are never wasted.
And how do you choose character names?
That's very well, apart from James, obviously. I went through quite a genesis with the first two, because the spy, the female in the spy novel was called Jenna Hutton, and that didn't fit with the Second World War. But Jonathan Kember was the spy, and I tried another name. I tried to be clever and called him Tangram, which is a Chinese picture puzzle where you fit shapes together. And I thought, when you go into a crime scene, you're seeing this picture puzzle. That'd be good. And there were Tangram is a name. There were a few Tangrams around at the time, not many, but I checked the census, and they were there. But people along the way said, "No, it doesn't sound quite right." And I said, "Okay, well, how about if I call him?" And I just changed it to Jonathan Kember, and everyone suddenly went, "Yes, that's the person." Lizzie was, I can't remember her second name now, but I think she had a double-barreled name. And no, it was Rawlinson. And people, Rawlinson doesn't quite sound right. So then I went through, I asked loads of people, and I was asking my wife, and we had loads of them written down. And I thought, okay, well, the way that she does her thinking is that she does what I was accused of at school quite a lot, which was daydreaming. And obviously daydreaming is done with your eyes open. And when I'm writing, if I want to see a scene, I don't if I close my eyes, I lose everything. I can't see anything, literally. But if I keep my eyes open and just kind of relax a bit, I get this kind of waking daydream where I can see the scene being played out, and then I can type it down. It sounds nutty, but there you go. Certifiable, but
not for an author. Anything goes with authors. Yeah, whatever you sound, it's like, yeah, that sounds perfectly reasonable.
Yeah. So do you remember those Magic Eye books where you had the picture, but if you relaxed your eyes and saw through the picture, you could see? I get those like that. My wife can't get them at all. I do have a trouble with if they're blue, slightly blue colored. It takes me a bit longer. Any other color, any other pattern, I get them straight away. I'm standing in front of these. There was a shop where I used to work, and I had this big poster, and me and some other work colleagues were around it, and I'm going, "Well, can't you see it's a dolphin?" And they go, "Don't be, there's nothing there. Look, it's a dolphin." And of course, you can't show them what it looks like, because it's your perception, because that's the picture, that's your eye, but you've got to focus here. And in focusing there, everything else here comes into a different focus. And I thought that's what Lizzie Hayes is doing when she's thinking about these things. And so Days, Hayes. I thought, that's her surname. So that's the way those two came about. But all the other characters, well, it used to be the phone book, didn't it? You go through the phone book, but now it's going through the cast list in the Radio Times, or looking at the books on the shelf at the back here, and I'm kind of looking around, and if I got a magazine, I flick through to see who the articles are by. I never take one particular name. It's always, I think, that's a good surname, and then I'll take a first name. But because this is the Second World War, you have to think, okay, well, if they're around 30 in 1940, they got to be born in 1910. What's the 1910 popular names? So then you have to go back for that, and then people like Mrs. Garner, who's a bit older than that, you have to go back into the previous century sometimes, which are completely different names. But surnames don't change a great deal. They've been around for donkey's years. So yeah, that's the way it's done. It's kind of a part inspiration, part mix and match, part tearing the rest of my hair out.
One of my author friends used to use the Chelsea football team, mix up their names for his characters.
Well, that said, Kemba was originally named after Steve Kemba, who was a Crystal Palace forward, who got sold to Chelsea in his best years, and he came back when he was a bit of a has-been. So, but he did manage Palace for a while as well. So yeah. So there may be some other footballers make their way in there, later on.
Which of your characters do you have most fun writing, and which gives you most trouble?
The most fun writing is Lizzie, I think, because, as I say, this kind of daydreaming thing, I can do that. And then when she's right about all this stuff about just her mind going off at tangents, which mine does quite a bit, as you can probably tell from this interview. So yeah, I can write. I try and aim for somewhere in the region of 1,000 or 1,200 words a day. Any less than that, I'm a bit disappointed. Any more than that, and I have to go back and see if it's rubbish or not, because I think, how can I write that much? But when I'm doing Lizzie Hayes scenes, it just kind of flows. And I love that. The one that gives me most difficult, I think probably, well, the villains. I mean, although the villains are nice to write, I tend to make people a lot nicer than they should be. So I have to kind of stick in a bit of evil there. I mean, my friends might say different, but I don't think I'm naturally evil. So I have to kind of dredge the depths of my soul to try and get some of that in there. But that's quite difficult to do. And also because you're trying to, because in the books I'm not in their heads. I'm trying to make them say and do stuff. I mean, if you on television, they can do something surreptitiously. They can just kind of pull their ear or get something off a shelf. But if you're describing that in a book, you're drawing attention to it straight away, and it's much harder to conceal and hide that kind of thing. So I find that a lot more difficult. But another character I do like is the he's I should have read my own books before I did this interview. Hartson, Chief Inspector. He's based on a few bosses I've had in the past, not one in particular. He's an amalgamation of three, maybe four. Bit curmudgeonly, a bit by the book sometimes. When it comes to personal stuff, there's one particular boss who, if she said, "Oh, I need time off because of whatever it is, some kind of family problem," yep, go, wouldn't want to know. And so yeah, so when when my character has got some issues, he doesn't mean, no, I don't want to know about that. Oh really? Because he's going through this divorce and what have you. Kimber doesn't. Well, Kimber tries to talk to him about it, and he's going, "Oh, no, don't want to know, don't want to know, go away." So that's based on one of my bosses, but it's obviously an amalgamation, and that's quite fun. I'd like to. I mean, he does make a bigger appearance in number 2, but I'd like to have. If the series was to carry on, I'd like to give him a bigger part in another one, but we'll have to see how that goes.
I mean, I hope they continue because I've only read the 3rd one, but I absolutely loved it. So,
well, I understand that you made the same mistake as quite a lot of other people make. That they see the Spitfire or something on the front and the war background and think it's going to be a war story. And I really didn't want them to. I wanted the war as part of it, obviously, because even when you've got a contemporary crime novel or whatever, or a thriller, there are events happening in the background that impact or color what's going on in your story. But whatever story it is, whether it's a love story or a thriller or crime or even science fiction, whatever's in the foreground, the rest of it's in the background, unless you want that particular event to be the focus of the story. So, if it's, I was on the telly yesterday or a couple of days ago, the Trump and the riots. If you want that to be a main feature of what's happening to your characters, then obviously that comes to the fore. But with mine, I wanted it then because obviously I'd found the female pilot that I wanted, Joy Lofthouse. I thought that's a good era to set it. There's no forensics as such, although forensic does start to make an appearance with Luminol, which was right at the beginning of its use. And it's really kind of an experimentation time with Scotland Yard. And my guys coming from Scotland Yard knew people there, so they kind of dragged that in with them. There are things like fingerprints and that kind of thing, but you can't just send stuff off to the lab and get some kind of DNA analysis. You can't ring them up on the mobile phone. I mean, in the first one, I describe a phone call where you get 3 minutes. I mean, in my early days, you used to go to the phone box, put your coin in, and then the pips would go, and then you had to keep feeding it with the coins. But back in the Second World War, there were phone boxes, but it was a case of if you were ringing from one place to another, it would go through I'll say a manned exchange, but mainly it was women that were on the exchange, especially into villages. You had the village postmistress who would stick the pins in various places and then listen in because she was a gossip. So you never knew who was listening. Even on a secure line, there was always somebody there listening, and you always got these 3 minutes and what have you. And then you say, also in the war, they limited it to very few conversations of 3 minutes because wartime stuff needed to be prioritized. So there's limited capacity for the British network to take calls was given over to military use. So civilians, you see, on the telly, on the films, they're ringing everybody willy-nilly. But sometimes you had to book a call because there wasn't the capacity. And there are party lines as well, where you had to share a main line, but 2 separate lines. So, I mean, even when I was younger, and I can still remember my phone number from the time. The first 3 digits were based on the area. So I lived in a place called Spring Park. So it's SPR, and SPR on the dial, because each number had some letters, was SPR. So SPR was 777.
Oh yeah, of course.
So my 7778580 was my number. So I remember that because of Spring Park. But then we had a party line, so you'd pick it up, you'd have to listen, because if somebody else was already talking on the line, you had to put it down. Or if you're one of those people that liked listening in, you didn't. You just listened. But if you were on a call, and you heard a click, everything went silent, because then you'd listen for the breathing at the other end to see if somebody else was listening in your conversation. So back in the Second World War, it was even worse, because people were legitimately, sticking their headphones on and sticking pins in here and there and listening in and saying, "Oh, you've got 3 minutes. That's the end of your 3 minutes." So all that kind of limitation on what you could do, what you could say to people, how you could say it, the communications. The postie on his bike, there's no, certainly in rural places, they didn't have vans, cycling everywhere in all weathers. The baker might even not have a van, they might just have a bicycle with a basket on the front. So getting around, communication, travel, although there were trains, again, military use came first. So if that train was being used by a military train, then the 635 was cancelled, kind of thing. So I liked all of that kind of background and limitation. But at the foreground is this relationship between a guy who's been trained to be a logical detective, and Lizzie Hayes, whose own innate strange abilities go against everything that he has been taught. So that's what I wanted, that thing. So the war in the background, but you and many others make the wrong assumption that if there's a Spitfire on the front, it's got to be shoot 'em up. I mean, there is some shoot 'em up as well. I mean, there's bombs raining all the time, but that means evidence is destroyed, or they have to kind of hold off the investigation for a while, or as in one of the books, the villagers get really upset because all the bombs are raining down and then there's killers on the loose. And so, but set against village life as well, which was you shut me out at any time.
No.
My mother-in-law comes from a little village called East Hagborn, and the village life, certainly in a very, very small village, everyone knows everyone's business, which is sometimes a good thing because you can come together in times of crisis. But when there is no crisis, they kind of tend to create their own. Boredom gets in the way, and then they start, oh yeah, but have you seen, and what about, oh, that's not very good, is it? And how about, which is where Ethel Garner comes in. So this is where I'm pulling all these elements in from.
And it works. I mean, honestly, I read the third one because I think there was a blog tour, wasn't there?
Yes.
And I read it for the blog tour and immediately wanted to go read the first two. So, yeah, if people get past that, which I will try and encourage them, then it was just awesome. So, yeah.
Well, the third one was a slight departure from the first. The first one was almost exclusively in the village and the air station. The second one kind of spreads out a little bit. They have to go over to the docks, Chatham Dockyard, which is not far from where I live, for some more investigation. And then there's the third one. I thought I'll take them completely out of that, but still in that kind of cozy crime, closed atmosphere, because I'd seen that. I'd read that Kent had a coal mining industry, and I never knew that. So I did a little bit of investigation into that, and there is a coal miners' trail in East Kent, which is kind of going to rack and ruin now. The signboards and notices and information boards are kind of not being upkept, and the path isn't being upkept, but it's still there. You can still follow it, and there are mills and things all around there, and old coal mine buildings. My brother actually lives on an estate that was built or that was extended, and it's the site of the old accommodation for Chislet Colliery. And Chislet, it's the same as everywhere else. There's kind of footings and things where the shape of the buildings. But other places there are still buildings in place. Another place is Bettishanger, which is has got a museum there now. Well, that's very interesting. So I went up to the National Museum up north, the Coal Mining Museum, and went down for an underground tour, and my brother and I looked around there. And there's two pits. There's the Hope Pit, and there's the, I can't remember what the other one's called now, but there's two. One's older than the other. But you can go down one, and you can have this tour all the way around. They show you the old style of mining and what have you. And the guy there, whose nickname is called Big Bird because he was a really big chap and he wore this kind of yellow fluorescent, so they called him Big Bird after Sesame Street. And he would be going, oh yes, and we used to do this, and our shift used to be that, and we used to use these things to do this, and I'd go, carbon monoxide, how quickly does that kill you down here? How long could you go without an air supply, and all this kind of thing? And I had to tell him at the end, and the rest of the group that we were in, that actually I was a writer and setting my next book in a coal mine because he just thought I was a psychopath. But obviously from that the story came because I thought, oh yeah, if I can put this in a fictional coal mine in an area where there were coal mines in Kent, so not far from where my people are stationed, and if I can then cut it off by bringing in the storm. And I looked on I've got a completely anal really. I've got apps for what was on the radio at whatever time in 1940, what the weather was like, all this kind of stuff, and what the news was. And it turned out that in the period that I've set book 3, there was some quite heavy snowfall. So I thought, oh right, okay, so I'm going to tweak up the snowfall a little bit, cut them off in this coal mine, and nobody can come to the rescue. They got to do it all on their own. And so that it still conforms to the cozy crime element, I suppose, insofar as it's a closed environment with a limited number of characters, but where there are several suspects. And I enjoyed that. I found that fun.
Yeah, well, it's awesome. So I'm glad. If you were able to spend a day with any author, dead or alive, who would you like to spend a day with?
I think Alice MacLean. When I was asked that previous festival which author I kind of liked and admired, and I said Alice MacLean, there were a few blank looks around the room, and there were a few going, oh well, why haven't you chosen, I don't know, C.S. Lewis or Ian Fleming or whoever. And it's because in my formative years, my dad gave me, I could see these books on his shelf, and he said, oh no, they're not for you yet. Not because there was anything crude or anything like that in them, but because he didn't think that at that time my understanding I wouldn't have got the appreciation out of them. So eventually he said, oh, okay, you want to read them? And I've got them here. Should have them somewhere. No, it's not behind there. They're around somewhere. They're on there somewhere. There's no filing system, as you can see. Apart from the Colin Dexters, we're a box set. Yeah, it was Alice MacLean. So the first one that I got to read was Bear Island, which is a contemporary thriller, or contemporary at the time it was written, contemporary thriller about Nazi gold on an island, a real island called Bear Island, north of Spitsbergen. And there's a submarine base there, abandoned submarine base, where some of this Nazi gold has been hidden. So these characters going up there and trying to recover that, and all the kind of backstabbing, and certain characters aren't who they are supposed to be. And I loved all that kind of. So then I read HMS Ulysses, which was his first one, which was about him on the Russian convoys, which was a lot more wartime factual. But when you say Alice MacLean, people go, oh, who's he? Well, Bear Island was made into a film, a rubbish film actually, but it was made into a film. Guns of Navarone, Force 10 from Navarone, Saint and Bug, Fear is the Key. What's the other one? Where Eagles Dare. I mean, half of his books, half the books that he wrote in his lifetime were made into films. And in fact, I think it might have been Where Eagles Dare. He'd already had a couple of films, maybe not Where Eagles Dare, but anyway, he'd had a couple of his books made into films, and he started to write in filmic terms. So he would write thinking, oh, this is going to be turned into a script. So we need an action piece here and an action piece there. So his later books are a little bit more contrived, but his early books are really tightly plotted. And you know, Where Eagles Dare, the book, obviously everyone thinks the books are better than the film, but I think the film captured the book very well. That essence of jeopardy and double crossing, and you don't know who's who. You don't know who's the good guy, who's the bad guy until right to the end. And the guy that you thought was actually the good guy is actually the one that's working against you. And so I loved all of that. And I've got his autobiography here somewhere where he talks his way, or he writes his way through what his writing process was and how he came up with all these ideas. I'd just love to get him in a room and just spend all day, you know, with, I was going to say with loads of food, but that's because I'm a glutton. Loads of food and drink, and just saying, oh yeah, but why, how did you do that? And what did you, and why, how did you think of that? And why did you put that in? And because, yeah, because I loved his books. So yeah, Alistair MacLean. An unusual choice, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's different, so why not? And if you're able to travel to any period of time, either forwards or backwards, where would you go?
I just got to pick one.
Can pick a few if you want.
Well, I'm a big Star Wars, Doctor Who, and Star Trek fan. So to go forward in time to see whether the technology that's on Star Trek now comes to fruition. I mean, back in the 1960s, they had flip-up communicators and that kind of thing. And then when they did the second, you know, the next generation, they had touch screens, and all this was kind of, it was a possibility, but nobody had done it. And then eventually, when, I don't know whether you remember, when they came out with mobile phones, there was one called the StarTAC, which was a flip-up phone. So all the Star Trek fans got those because you could flip it open and use it like a communicator. But yeah, so there's lots of stuff in sci-fi films where, and like time travel and transporter beams, where I'd like to go forward in time to see whether they actually get to do it. But the I suppose the two periods that most intrigue me about the past is the Second World War, because when I was younger, most of my family had lived through it, not just been born there. I mean, my dad was about 10 years old, and he told me the story of when Croydon Airport was attacked in the Battle of Britain. And I'm not sure whether it's Spitfire or a Hurricane now. I think it was. I think it might have been a Hurricane, but one of the British planes was chasing a Messerschmitt along the length of the or just straight down the road. And at the end of this road was a phone box and a police box, like Doctor Who. But it's just made of plywood, you know, 4x2 and plywood with a emergency telephone in there. You know, you get a whole hail of bullets and you'd be dead anyway. But my dad was there looking up, watching this thing coming towards him, with bullets kicking tarmac off the road as it missed the plane. And this big burly hairy police officer's hand came out, got his collar and pulled him into the police box. And he had a whole host of stories about that. So I'd like to go back and see for myself what it was like. I mean, that people tell a lot of fun stories about it, but the nightly fear of being bombed in the early days, you know, obviously people in Ukraine are getting that now in war zones, but us in Britain, apart from a few terrorist incidents, we don't get that. So I'd like to go back and see what it was really like. But beyond that, but the film script and one of my early attempts at a book was set in the time of King Richard I. The Third Crusade and Richard the Lionheart and King John and Magna Carta and all of that. So that early medieval period. A friend of mine is completely obsessed with the Tudor period, which again is interesting. But technology's moved on and society's moved on by then. But back in the medieval times, it was just a case of you disagree with somebody, you got your sword out.
Yeah.
Fights in the pub now, fisticuffs. In London and other inner cities, the youngsters are getting the knives out. But back then, if you didn't have a knife, you were a weirdo, really. And if you could afford it, you had a sword. But if you had a sword, you had to know how to use it. Villagers tended not to have daggers or swords, but they still had knives. So if raiders came, if bandits of whatever kind, robbers or whatever it was, came to either burn their village down, nick their crops, or take away their cattle, they would go out with knives and pitchforks and stuff like that. So two different aspects of society. The people, the haves, that have got access to weapons, which, even though they were swords, and I didn't realize this, people did hone their swords so that you could cut, but most of the time people died of broken bones caused by bludgeoning. So the sword that okay, it would cut your flesh, but it would break the bone, and what you would do is you wouldn't die of the wound per se, you'd die of blood loss, you'd die of the infection that came after it. Not painting a nice picture of that period, really, but
no. Well, that's why that's why I wouldn't want to go back. Give me my sanitation and my antibiotics. Thank you very much.
Oh, I wouldn't want to stay there. I mean, flitting in and out like Doctor Who. Just go back for a little while and then escape at the earliest sign. I'm a complete coward, so it's the earliest sign of trouble, I'll be off.
Good idea.
I'd be the guy at the back urging those with swords to go forward.
Yeah, that's it. You get him. Go on off.
You go. I'll cook you something when you get. Yeah, but no, it's a fascinating time because King Richard I was a king in absentia for a large period. I think he was only here for. I might have got this wrong. He was only here for 6 months of his reign or something. He came here. He was crowned. Went off the Crusades. He did stuff in France because he had the French lands were a lot of the French lands were his. And then his errant brother King John, who actually did a lot of good. He's been a bit maligned by history. Everyone thinks he was jealous of his brother, but when he actually became king, he wasn't too bad. Oh yes, he got hauled over the coals and Magna Carta and all that, but actually he did a lot of reforms in the law before that, and in society in general. So he wasn't as bad a king as he's made out, against the kind of gung-ho leadership of his older brother. But yeah, I'd like to go back and have a rummage around because I like castles and stuff. If ever we go on our walks and there's a castle, that's where we're going to go. If I've spoken to other people about this, they're not beach people. They go away with the family and they're laying on a beach. They might stick it for an hour. They might stick it for an hour and a half if there's a nice long cool beer there involved. But behind them on the hill over there is a ruined castle, and it's always in your mind. Who was in there? Who built it? And going off subject here now, but I went. We visited. Our family visited some other friends in Cyprus, and from Limassol they did a trip out to. I can't remember the name of the port now, but it's a port in Syria when it was peaceful there. And so we, my wife and I went on this kind of overnight trip. You overnight there, day trip around, and then overnight back on the ship. And you got taken to a place called Crac de Chevalier, which is a Crusader castle. But very interesting that the winners in a war or in history write the history. I've learned about the fact that this was held by the Crusaders, by the Knights Templar, and to protect the pilgrim routes from the north through Turkey down into the Holy Land. But when you get there and you get the English guidebook that they've written, it's written from the Muslim perspective. And then you realize that actually the Crusaders didn't build the castle. The Muslims built the castle to protect their own lands from invaders and what have you. And that the Knights Templar, all they did was kind of added a few bits. A bit like the Nazis in the Second World War. They would take over. I mean, I don't know whether you've ever been there, Jersey. Have you been to Jersey?
No.
There's a little island out in the bay called Elizabeth Island, and on there is Elizabeth Castle. And obviously every castle's got various periods of additions to it. You get the old medieval, then you get a bit added, then you get kind of Jacobean Georgian or whatever on the top of it. And then right at the top, always, there's a concrete bunker or lookout post, which was put there by the Nazis. And that's like Crac de Chevalier. Muslims built it. It crumbled a bit. They added a bit more. There's a bit of a siege. They built a bit more. Along come the Knights Templar, put a few bits on the top and say this is ours, and then everyone thinks they've built it. So yeah, so that's the periods really. Second World War, Richard the Lionheart era, and if I can have a third, a couple of 100 years in the future to see if we've got transporter beams sorted.
Oh, I'd love to go to that place. I mean, obviously not possible, but that sounds so fascinating. When we went to Cyprus, we went across to Egypt, which was obviously awesome. Well, it wasn't like, because there were people trying to sell you stuff around the pyramids, and it was just exhausting. So, but seeing them and the Sphinx, we went to a papyrus factory and we went to a museum with all the stuff. It was just mind blowing, and to think that they'd done that. I mean, I'm not very tall, but I think one brick of a pyramid was my height or taller than me. So they're absolutely massive. So yeah, but we didn't get to go in there because I think we went in November and I think they'd closed them. So
I've been a couple of times actually. Second time was with my daughter's school on a kind of a Red Sea cruise thing, because I was a parent governor. So I wheedled my way onto that trip.
Nice.
I still had to pay, but I kind of went, I'm a governor. I need to know how these trips are done. So I'm coming. But I had been many years before with my wife. Before we were married, we went out there and we did Cairo, and then we did a Nile tour all the way down to the Aswan Dam and a trip south to Abu Simbel. I was as sick as a dog for 4 days. I got the biggest, I don't know what is in Egypt. It's in India, we call it Delhi belly.
Yeah, the Egyptian version of whatever that is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
I can't think of one, but it's a rude one. Yeah, so but yeah, pyramids and the people selling stuff, pushing stuff into your hand and saying, "Oh, this is a present. This is a present."
Yeah, and then demanding.
You can't. Oh no, I don't want that. Thank you very much. Oh, you are insulting my country. Oh, all right, I'll take it then. Okay, $5 American. No, I don't want it. Oh, you insult my country. So yeah, it's a bit of a battle. But yeah,
Yeah.
the stuff is fascinating. And actually, when we got to, I think it was Aswan, because we went down to Thebes, Luxor, Valley of the Kings, all the way down to the Temple of Philae by the dam, and we went. It's called the Cataracts Hotel, and it's where Agatha Christie stayed.
Oh wow.
I don't know whether she actually wrote any of Death on the Nile there, but she went down the Nile, she stayed there. Tried to find out which room she was in, but I couldn't work it out.
Are you, or what events are you attending or participating in this year?
A few, fortunately. I'm going up to the Crime Writers Association conference at the end of this week. Go up on Friday, but that's not that's just a Crime Writers membership thing. I'm going at the end of May. Going to Crime Fest in Bristol. I'm on a panel there. Also in Capital Crime. I can't remember the date of Capital Crime. Oh, it's moved forward. It's now August. So I'm appearing on a panel at Capital Crime, which is moved from Battersea Park to a hotel quite near to St Paul's.
St Paul's. Yeah.
So
it sounds awesome, actually. Yeah.
It's good. That was fun last time because I was on with Imran Mahmood and Tony Kent, and they were great. And Will Carver, who was
he's just
he's like a male Louise Mumford.
Yes, he is.
So Crime Fest, Capital Crime. I'll do it in June. On June the 8th, I'm doing the Murderous Medway, which is a panel as part of the Medway or Literary Festival, I think it's called, or River Festival. It's just a one-off one afternoon, but that's with Lisa Cutts and Julie Wassmer, who does the Whitstable Pearl. That's on television now. Lisa Cutts, I've got their books there actually. Lisa's 3 cozy crime books. She's done some very lovely police procedurals as well, because she used to be, or she's not used to be an ex-cop. She is an ex-cop, so she wrote those procedurals, but now she's moved into cozy crime. So the 3 of us are doing that panel, and then hopefully repeating that panel at your Brighton event in October. So that should be good fun. Because by then we'll have had all our arguments and it'll be a nice panel. I think that's it really. Capital Crime, I'm not going to Harrogate this year. I've not appeared at Harrogate anyway, but I've always been there as, I've been there as the classic groupie fanboy, seeing how the real writers earn their crust while the rest of us are scrabbling down in the lower echelons. But yeah, I couldn't afford that one as well this year, so I've stuck with the 2 that I'm appearing, or 2 that I'm appearing out there, and your event in Brighton. That's it. I mean, I'd love to go to more. I mean, if there were more out there and more people got to like my books and wanted to see me, then I'd love to do more. It's not my natural thing to be in front of a camera. One of the reasons I'm babbling so much is because nerves, really. I just kind of gush. But yeah, it's not my forte. It's not my natural habitat to be in front of people. I mean, I can.
Or mine. So what possessed me to do it? Why? It's actually my worst nightmare. Like, seriously, what was I thinking? And this is like the 3rd time that I'm going to put myself up in front of people. I'm insane. Like, literally, I couldn't think of anything worse. This is bad enough.
Back in the day, I mean, when I was reading books by Hammond Innes and people like that, kind of thrillers and things. When was that? 1970s and 1980s. It was a case that you typed away in your typewriter, you then sent it off in a big, thick, kind of padded package. Then it would come back saying no. But if you were a real writer, you'd send it off, and then your editor would send stuff back, and there would be a little bit of toing and froing, and then they'd go, right, okay, published in 2 months' time, blah blah blah, or whatever it was, and that was it. And occasionally, the real, the Ian Flemings and who wrote Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy? Can't remember now.
John le Carré?
John le Carré, yeah, keep it out of my head. I've just read Agent Running in the Field. I should know that. Yeah, so they get on television occasionally on the arts programs. There may be an article in the posh press. There'd be a poster in Smith's or wherever the books were, and that would be it. Occasionally they would talk somewhere. They would be after dinner speaker or something. But now I've got to be a social media person and a Zoom person and an in-person person when all I really want to do is sit here drinking coffee, eating Jaffa cakes, and writing. I mean, it's not that I don't enjoy talking to you. It's just it's not my forte. Really. It's not my thing of choice to do. You know, being an anonymous writer, sitting there in a smoky attic. Well, I don't smoke, but you know,
Yeah,
everyone thinks you got a cigarette and a whiskey. You know, I'm going off a whiskey, and I don't never smoke. So, but you know, but cup of tea, cup of coffee, and a Jaffa cake is my whiskey and cigarette.
Yeah, sounds better.
But yeah, doing that and just typing away, and then don't even have to post it now. Email it in, great. But no, you have to put yourself out there and constantly try and get people to know who you are, because that's the hardest thing. Because publicizing yourself, I mean, obviously, an agent would do a little bit, but that's not their thing. The publisher should, if they're a good publisher, pump it out in various formats. And you know, Thomas and Mercer, Amazon, they've got their algorithms and things, and they pump that out to people in their own way. But you still got to do things like get yourself on a blog tour or interact with other authors and do stuff online. I downloaded TikTok a couple of months ago. I haven't got a clue what's going on there.
Don't look at me either. I have no idea.
I've looked at BookTok and I've followed people and they followed me. And the people that followed me, I think, are hoping to learn off of me. And I followed them, hoping to learn off of them. And we haven't posted because we're too scared to do this stuff. I mean, my brother's good at it. You know, he does stuff. He did this thing where there was a dog running backwards and forwards. So it's split screen. So this dog was running that way. And when the dog ran that way, he kind of looked that way. And then the dog ran that way. And so he's cut it together and he's put music on it. And I thought, one, I can't do that. And two, I haven't got time to do that.
Yeah, I know. It goes way over my head as well. I have no idea.
So I've limited it to, well, Facebook was for friends and family, but now it's expanding because I've let more people in and it's now more of an author platform as well. Twitter took me a while to get into, but I've kind of got the hang of it and get involved in a few bits and pieces. Instagram, I still tend to go for posts rather than reels because the reels flummox me occasionally. When I have tried to do it, it's gone completely haywire. So I'm going to have to get my brother to give me a masterclass.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. It's honestly, I understand completely. Facebook is fine. I've got Facebook and Instagram normally, but yeah, reels. Just why can't you just post stuff and that's it? I don't get it. So totally with you. No idea.
You know, I did do an unboxing video for number 2, but that was it really. And I just did that with my daughter. She dressed up as Lizzie Hayes. I stuck my hat on for Kemba, and used the iPhone kind of the iMovie thing where you can make it into kind of a scratchy old movie to make it look like Second World War with a siren in the background. But that's kind of the limit of it, really. I mean, I used to do home movies, you know, cine films and stuff, and go on holiday and take it like that. And then when it moved into video, did it a bit. But there's so much you can do with video now. I'm busy being an author. I can't learn all this stuff.
I know. Apparently, if you just like do loads of interviews and go to all the festivals and have pink hair, then everyone knows who you are anyway. This is what I've learned. Yeah.
I've gone for the silver hair.
See, pink would look awesome with that.
Yeah, so we'll see.
Everyone would know who you were. I mean, you know, you'd be the author with pink hair. That would be pretty memorable.
Well, I could wear my my Kemba hat, but then I'm straying into Terry Pratchett territory there because of his big hat.
Yeah. See, pink hair is much better. It would wash out. It's fine.
Oh, I do. I shouldn't be telling you this really. When I still had dark hair and lots of it, I used to, when I had time, I used to do treasure hunts for car treasure hunts for my friends and family. Get about 6 or 7 cars together, 7 teams, and then I would do all these questions in this route. And on this occasion, I decided to do a little video beforehand. And back when I did this, people still remembered Shaw Taylor from Police 5, which was the little police program that gave you a little snippet. It was a bit the forerunner of Crime Watch, but it was only 5 or 10 minutes long. So I got these fake glasses because I didn't need them then, and I had the thick hair. So I got this stuff from the joke shop, which was old. It said something like old person's hair on it or something like that, or senior citizen's hair. And so I sprayed my hair grey. I got a friend's rain Mac, and then on top of a car park in Tunbridge Wells, did this little introductory video for this treasure hunt. But what I forgot was that I couldn't wash it out. I could wash it out afterwards, but there was nowhere to wash it out. So we went off for lunch in a roadside cafe, and I was being stared at because people could see that this hair had thick kind of spray all over it, and where I'd not quite done it, it was down behind my ear and my neck. So, yeah. So I do put myself into some situations that attract humiliation and ridicule.
Oh, I love it. Well, I don't have any more questions for you unless you think there's anything I haven't asked you that you want to tell us.
Not on the current ones. I mean, I've got because this trilogy, this arc has finished. I'm having a crack at something different, which is a contemporary story. It's about a group of aging lads, kind of based on my group, but I didn't want to make it our group. So what I've done is I've kind of pulled bits of characters from everywhere, made it into this little story about one of their chaps dies of cancer, and then says, go out. I want you to go out and live the life that I can't have. Go and do this stuff, and they do some of this stuff, and then think, well, actually, we want to do a bit of a memorial, a bit like I did with James, putting him in the book. But they decide to have this artifact that they create and take it to a place where they can put it in his memory. But in doing so, they have to address things like the loss that they're feeling of this chap, and how they're going to get this thing cross country, because it's big and heavy, and they have to wheel it, and they have to go through gates and over stiles and little streams and through farmers' fields, and so that kind of creates tension between them. And then they've got reminiscences from their childhood, like various ice creams that they used to eat, and which ones are their favourites, and arguing about the benefits of one biscuit over another, and all that, banal stuff that groups of mates talk about. But then there's always a bit of and that's the funny part. And then the counterpoint is that then they remember their mate, and they start then to talk about how they're feeling about the fact that he's gone. And then later on there's a discussion about, well, do you check yourself for signs of cancer and things like that. So there becomes a bit of seriousness, but at the end of that, somebody says something, and then they'll have a go at each other. So the funny bits are always counterpoint to the serious stuff. But it is a bit of a crime story as well, because did the guy die naturally? Did he take his own life, or was he assisted in some way? So there's this crime element in the background of them responsible for their mate's death ultimately.
That sounds awesome.
I'm about just over 60,000 words in, and it's going to be about 85, I think, 85 to 90. But whether my agent will like that or not after this lot remains to be seen. I mean, she may want more of this, but I'm hoping so. But I'm enjoying writing it, and it's different because it's contemporary. It's not historical, so I don't have to check my facts because it's all in here. A lot of it is my lived experience and those of my friends and my contemporaries of the time, and memories of school in the 60s and stuff like that, where they kind of just talk about things. But hopefully talk about it in a last of the summer wine kind of humorous way.
Awesome.
Yeah, so that's it. That's me up to date at the moment.
So before we go, would you just like to remind everyone where they can find out more about you, all those TikTok and Instagram handles, and where they can get your books from?
Oh, blimey. It's at Neil Daws 59 is my Twitter handle. I think it's just Neil Daws on Instagram. I've got a website, which is www.neildaws.either com or .co.uk, which has got all the books on there. Obviously, I'm on Amazon. It's my Amazon page there as well. Come and see me at the festivals, because without you lot, it's just me and a couple of other guys talking amongst themselves and wind whistling through the tent as it was at Capital Crime. Well, no, there was an audience at Capital Crime, but it was very windy. So yeah, and yeah, do check out these, because that's my lifelong ambition. I'm quite proud of them, and I know that many people most people that have read them have enjoyed them, apart from a couple of really strange people on Amazon who
you can't avoid them, they're everywhere.
who seem to have read completely different books. But yeah,
they're
Google me, find out about me, find out the good and the bad.
well, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.